When making the cookie bars, the first thing the recipe says is to set the oven to 350 degrees. The next step is greasing the pan, which every time that we do this in a lab, you're going to get a piece of paper towel, bring it up to the demo table where I will give you the shortening to do the greasing of the pan. All you'll do is spread it around, making sure to get all of the edges. What you're going to do every time you are making a recipe is send 1 to 2 people being preferred, up to the table where the ingredients are. When you get there, that person or people will be in charge of making sure you have all of the correct ingredients. So what you're going to do first is measure them all, just like I'm going to do now. The recipe says I need 1 cup of butterscotch chips, I'm going to measure out 1 cup, put it someplace that I'd be able to carry it back to my lab station in. Then I'm going to measure my chocolate chips, which is also 1 cup. And put them in the same place as the butterscotch chips because they're going to go in at the same time. Then I'm going to move on to the flour. And we need 2 1/4 cups flour. So I'm going to scoop my flour into my measuring cup. Then grab my spatula to make sure that it is filling the cup as evenly as possible. So that was 1 cup. That was 2. And then this will make 2 1/4. The other things that go in this mixture of the flour is the salt and the baking powder. We need 2 1/2 teaspoons baking powder. And on the baking powder container, it's going to have this nice flat edge right here that you can use to help level off your measuring spoons. So this was a 1/2 teaspoon. 1.5, and 2.5. Then the last dry ingredient that goes in this bowl is a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. It's important to make sure that you are not measuring your salt over the bowl that you are putting it in, because a little bit extra salt is going to make a big difference. So what I'm going to do is pour it into this 1/3 cup that I'm not going to be using. So I'll pour it over that way, grab my leveler, my spatula, level it off, and add it to the flour mixture. The next set of things that I need is what goes in my butter mixture. So I've got my softened butter. And it says a 1/2 cup. A 1/2 cup is equal to 1 stick. And I'll just put that into my large mixing bowl. Then we need our brown sugar. And brown sugar is one of those special ingredients that when we measure it, we make sure that it's packed in to the cup. So there's my 1/4 cup. And I'm going to need to open another package of this. Pack it in. So that's 1 1/4 cups of brown sugar. Then the last one. So brown sugar, butter, shortening, eggs, and vanilla. So shortening, we need 1/4 cup of shortening. I'm going to just use a spoon to take and scoop it into my 1/4 cup, pressing it down, packing it in just like you do with the brown sugar to make sure there's no air in there. Using the back of my spoon to level off the 1/4 cup as best I can. Then using my spoon still, I'm going to put it in the mixing bowl. The last thing we need to do for this step is add our eggs. And what you're going to do is take them back to your cooking station, your lab, and you will then crack them individually into a bowl to make sure that no shell gets into your cookies. The last thing that we need to add is the vanilla. And the recipe says we need 1 tablespoon. Again, this is one of those things where you're going to want to make sure you have something underneath it in case you go over a little bit. But this one, unlike the salt, it is completely okay if you do it over the bowl you're measuring it into. The next thing that is going to happen on lab days, after the person or people who have gotten all the ingredients have gotten the ingredients around and brought back to the lab station, the 2 to 3 other people will be the people who are doing most of the other work. So just like the recipe says, it says in a medium-sized bowl, sift together flour, baking powder, salt, and to do that twice. So we're gonna do it one time. And 2 times. When you are pouring it from one, sifting anything and sifting it more than once, it's a good idea to grab a spoon or a rubber scraper to help guide it into the sifter. Otherwise there'll be some of the dry mixture that isn't getting sifted twice and it'll only be getting sifted once. The reason we're doing this is to add air and make sure that all of the clumps are taken out of it. And when we have all of these ingredients being sifted at one time, it also takes away one step that we would have normally, which would be stirring it together. Once we've got that done, you'll set it aside just like it says. Then we move on to the next step. In a large mixing bowl, combine the brown sugar, butter, shortening, eggs, and vanilla on a medium speed. So I've got all of that in here, and we're gonna turn it on to a medium speed. The next thing in the recipe says we should be combining it until it is smooth, and it is smoothed, and I have used the rubber scraper to scrape down the sides. So the next thing we're going to be doing is adding in our flour mixture gradually. And there's a couple ways you can do that. The way that I'm going to do it is using a spoon. I'm just going to hold the other bowl over the large mixing bowl and spoon some in, a little at a time. I'm going to take the mixing bowl off of the mixer, scrape down as much of this extra dough as possible into the big mixing bowl. I'm going to grab my wooden spoon, just like it says, and after all of the flour is mixed in, using a wooden spoon, stir in the butterscotch and chocolate chips. Now that the chocolate chips and butterscotch chips are fully combined, we're going to just put them onto our greased bake sheet, spreading the dough until it is as even as possible. Then we will put the pan into the oven for 20 minutes or until the cookies are golden brown.